The day after her divorce, she moved into a run-down motel with her baby, unaware the man next door was a heartbroken millionaire. Marissa Winters, 32, stared at the cracked ceiling of room 6B at the Sunset Pines Motor Inn, the cheapest place she could find with the last $58 in her purse. Her daughter Zoe, barely 6 months old, whimpered restlessly against her chest. The room smelled faintly of mildew and broken dreams. She was freshly divorced, jobless and emotionally wrecked. Everything she owned now fit into a second-hand duffel bag. The motel's faded carpet scratched beneath her bare feet as she rocked Zoe gently, trying to soothe her. Outside, traffic murmured by, unaware of the silent storm in 6B. The walls were thin. Marissa could hear the muted hum of a television next door. It was in this bleak, vulnerable moment that she whispered to herself, "I can't do this anymore." But she had to, for Zoe. Ethan Cross sat in room 6C with the curtains drawn, sipping cold coffee as the stock market scrolled soundlessly across his tablet. He was a self-made millionaire who had built his empire out of nothing, only to lose his family to time and distance. Ethan didn't stay at Sunset Pines because he had to. He stayed there because it was where no one expected to find someone like him. It was quiet, forgettable, and he liked it that way. But that night he heard something different through the wall. A woman's muffled sobs and a baby's weak cries. It unsettled something in him. He stood, placing his hand on the wall that separated him from 6B. 3 soft knocks. He had no idea why he did it, but it felt right. Marissa flinched when she heard the gentle raps on the wall. She stared at the faded paint, wondering if she'd imagined it. Another 3 knocks, slow and deliberate. Her pulse quickened. Was someone trying to scare her? But somehow it didn't feel threatening. She hesitated before lifting her trembling hand and replying with 2 quick taps. Silence followed. Then 3 knocks again. She didn't know who was on the other side, but in that moment she didn't feel quite as alone. It was a strange comfort, a coded message between strangers in the night. By morning, Zoe's temperature had spiked. Marissa paced the small room, her heart thundering with panic. She had no car, no nearby clinic, and barely enough money for a bus fare. Her phone buzzed with a message from her ex, cold and dismissive. No help there. Wrapping Zoe tightly, she cradled her daughter and whispered soothing words that betrayed her growing dread. Desperation clawed at her, and in that moment of hopelessness she rested her head against the wall and quietly knocked twice, hoping someone still cared. An hour later, a knock came, not from the wall but the door. Marissa opened it cautiously. No one was there, but at her feet sat a small brown paper bag. Inside, a bottle of infant fever medication, a can of baby formula, and a handwritten note. "You're not alone." Room 6C, tears welled in her eyes as she clutched the bag to her chest. For the first time in weeks she felt seen, and it meant everything. The next night, after Zoe's fever finally broke, Marissa slipped a folded napkin under the door of room 6C. On it she had scrawled with a hotel pen, "Thank you. I didn't know anyone could be that kind." Ethan found the note when he returned from a walk. He smiled softly, then scribbled a reply on the back and returned it the same way. Sometimes it takes one heart in trouble to wake another. A quiet conversation had begun, the kind that didn't need faces to feel real. Over the next few days, Ethan and Marissa continued their unusual dialogue through notes slid under the door and occasional knocks on the wall. She told him about her fears of raising Zoe alone, her failed marriage, her broken dreams. He shared memories of his late wife, his estranged daughter, and his overwhelming loneliness despite his wealth. Their words became their lifeline, raw and unfiltered. In the silence between each note they began to heal. Marissa found groceries at her door the next morning, baby wipes, fruit and soup. She left Ethan half a sandwich and a tiny baby drawing from Zoe. The exchange of gifts grew more personal. Neither of them ever crossed the hallway to knock in person. They remained just voices on paper, but the intimacy was unmistakable. When a social worker visited the motel after an anonymous call, Marissa panicked. She thought she might lose Zoe, but the worker left reassured after seeing Zoe healthy and cared for. That night, Marissa left a shaky note for Ethan. "Did you make the call?" His reply came fast. "No, but if they did, it's because someone saw your strength and your love, not your failure." That was the first time Marissa realized Ethan believed in her. On Zoe's half-birthday, Marissa found a balloon tied to her doorknob. Inside was a card, "To the brightest little girl at Sunset Pines." Marissa laughed aloud, the sound surprising even herself. She wrote back, "We want to meet you. Is that okay?" The wall stayed silent that night, and so did room 6C. The next morning, Marissa mustered the courage to walk across the hallway and gently knock on room 6C's door. Her palms were sweaty, heart pounding. When the door finally creaked open, Ethan stood there. tall, silver-haired, with weary eyes that held a surprising warmth. He wore a wrinkled navy sweater and held a mug of coffee as if it were armor. For a moment they just stared at each other. No words, just recognition. Ethan's voice broke the silence. "Hi," Marissa smiled softly. "Hi," she replied. Zoe nestled quietly in her arms. And just like that, the wall between them wasn't a wall anymore, it was a doorway. Later that day, Ethan invited Marissa to sit outside on the motel's cracked bench beneath the flickering porch light. They sipped motel coffee from mismatched mugs while Zoe napped in her stroller beside them. Their conversation was unforced, even light at times. Ethan talked about his late wife's passion for painting. Marissa shared her dreams of opening a small flower shop. "I used to believe in beginnings," she admitted. Ethan nodded, eyes soft. Maybe this is one. The quiet between them wasn't empty, it was peaceful. That night, Ethan handed Marissa an envelope. Inside was a faded photo of a teenage girl and a woman with paint on her cheek, his wife and daughter. "I lost them," he said. "Not to death, but to me being gone emotionally. Work consumed me. By the time I woke up they were too far." Marissa placed her hand gently on his. "You didn't lose them overnight. Maybe you just didn't know how to stay." Her words weren't accusatory, just honest. Ethan exhaled. No one had ever put it that way. He felt exposed, but strangely lighter. A week passed, and laughter started to replace silence at Sunset Pines. One morning, as Ethan made silly faces from his doorway, Zoe erupted into her first full, delighted giggle. The sound stunned Marissa. She hadn't heard her daughter laugh like that, ever. It was pure, joyful, and contagious. Ethan froze, then grinned. "Did I do that?" Marissa wiped her eyes, smiling through happy tears. "Yes, and you better do it again." That moment marked a shift. Their bond wasn't just about survival anymore. It was becoming something deeper, gentler, alive. One late evening, Ethan walked over with a small brass key. "It's for a place by the lake. My family's cabin. Haven't used it in years," he said nervously. "I thought maybe you and Zoe could use a real home." Marissa stared at him, unsure. "Are you offering charity?" Ethan shook his head. "I'm offering peace, and maybe a second chance, for both of us." Her fingers curled around the key. For the first time in months, her future didn't look like a gray hallway and motel wallpaper. It looked like possibility. Marissa sat on the edge of the motel bed that night, the brass key resting in her open palm. It was small, unremarkable, but it carried the weight of everything she feared: change, vulnerability, trust. She had been surviving on her own for so long, fiercely guarding her independence like a shield. Letting someone in, even someone as gentle as Ethan, felt terrifying. Yet, as she watched Zoe sleeping peacefully beside her, she realized that survival wasn't enough anymore. Her daughter deserved more than peeling walls and flickering lights. And maybe, just maybe, she did too. The next morning she knocked on Ethan's door, her voice soft but certain. "Tell me about the lake house." The lake house was nothing like Marissa expected. It wasn't grand or luxurious. It was modest, with creaky wooden floors, wide windows that welcomed sunlight, and a dock that reached out like a quiet promise. As she stepped inside, holding Zoe close, a wave of calm washed over her. For the first time in ages, she felt the absence of fear. Ethan watched her take it all in, his hands nervously in his pockets. "I haven't been here since my daughter left for college," he said. "It's been empty, like me." Marissa turned, tears in her eyes. "Then maybe we can fill it together." That moment became the start of something neither of them had dared to imagine. Life at the lake house was slow and healing. Mornings began with coffee on the porch, afternoons filled with walks through tall grass, and evenings bathed in orange light reflecting off the water. Marissa found herself humming again, even dancing in the kitchen with Zoe giggling in her arms. Ethan, too, began to change. He smiled more, started painting again, and even taught Zoe how to toss stones into the lake. Their connection was no longer a lifeline from hardship. It was evolving into companionship, trust, and a sense of belonging. In shared chores and quiet dinners, they found home, not built of bricks but of moments and understanding. On a chilly autumn evening, Marissa found an envelope on the porch swing. Inside was a note in Ethan's handwriting. "You knocked on my wall and changed my life." Underneath he'd drawn a tiny stick figure family, him, her, and Zoe. Standing by the lake, tears slipped down Marissa's cheeks. She didn't need a grand declaration. This was it. Simple, true, and real. That night, as they sat by the fire, she leaned against him and whispered, "I never believed in fairy tales, but you rewrote my ending." Ethan smiled, wrapping an arm around her. "Maybe we're just starting the middle. It wasn't perfect, but it was theirs." Months later, the lake house echoed with the sounds of new life. Zoe's delighted squeals, Ethan's soft laughter, and Marissa's voice reading bedtime stories aloud. The pain of their pasts had not vanished, but it had softened, like scars gently fading under time and care. Together, they had built something more enduring than wealth or security, a true home, and it had all started with a knock through a motel wall. One quiet gesture, one act of kindness had changed the course of 3 lives. So if you ever feel alone, remember, sometimes connection finds us in the most unexpected ways. If this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe for more tales of hope, heart, and healing.